Hey, this is Fate from Diablo3strategyguide.com, where we're bringing you another great video to go along with our strategy guide. Today we're going to be covering a specific Inferno high-level wizard build called the Venom Hydra Blizzard build. It's one of the most popular builds in Inferno difficulty, and it's commonly used by wizards that are level 60 as just kind of their all-purpose build. So there are a couple really basic assumptions built into this video that we're just going to ignore just for the sake of simplicity. So we're going to ignore items for this build. We're going to just more focus on how you want to move the wizard, how you want to use your skills, and that kind of thing. It also assumes that you're level 60. We're using some skills and runes that you will not unlock until you reach level 60. You can use different variants of this build throughout the game, but we are just going to focus on kind of the top level play. So I'm just going to real briefly go over some of the skills and runes that we have. So in this variant of the build we're using Magic Missile with Seeker. Now that doesn't need to necessarily be true. You can substitute that for some other primary skills, but we'll just leave it at that for now. Of course you're going to be using Blizzard, and we're going to be using the rune you unlock at level 60, Unrelenting Storm. We also use Magic Weapon with Force Weapon, very standard at this stage of the game, and yes, that does improve your Hydra's damage and attack rate. Energy Armor, Force Armor, very standard in Inferno and kind of the higher difficulties. You need these kind of to just simply to stay alive, as well as Diamond Skin, kind of the same deal there. Works very well in conjunction with Force Armor. And we also have Hydra, of course, and the Venom Hydra rune I think is really key, and I think it's one of the best runes in the game, and specifically for the wizard class. The passive skills we'll be using Galvanizing Ward, again very standard, helps your health regen significantly with Energy Armor. Glass Cannon, better DPS for your Hydra, as well as Astral Presence. Just kind of very standard passive skills right here. So how this works to kind of balance arcane power consumption is really basic, and kind of your big arcane power suck of course is Blizzard, which costs 45 arcane power. That's largely going to be where your arcane power goes. Hydra of course takes a small amount, and you'll have to recast that every 15 seconds, but compared to the 45 arcane power and more frequent casting of Blizzard, your arcane power is really just going to go straight into Blizzard. So I would kind of say that the build is largely driven with the Hydra used for DPS, and the Magic Missile is just kind of a supplemental skill, and the Blizzard is really used to slow down your enemy and kind of emphasize the effects of the Venom Hydra's poison. And initially when I played the game I was extremely surprised to hear about this build, because I largely ignored Hydra. I had assumed that summons kind of had really low DPS and that sort of thing, so I really ignored it for the first 3 or 4 days since the release. And then I started hearing about these builds, and I was like, oh well, I guess I should try this, and I actually really like this build. The Hydra does a ridiculous amount of damage for a summon, and here we're going to get into a little bit of gameplay. You can see that for here largely I didn't use Magic Missile as much as I could, because I wanted to kind of emphasize the Venom Hydra and Blizzard. So you see that the Venom Hydra just creates this huge pool of venom, and those poison pools just kind of mow the enemy down extremely quickly, and it's great area of effect damage. So you can largely cast these Hydras and Blizzards well in front of your hero, and just kind of sit back, come back in a few seconds and revisit the carnage and kind of clean up whatever is left. You will have to recast Hydra every 15 seconds or so, or when you move battle of course, but it's a very low arcane power cost considering the amount of DPS that you get out of it. Alright, so we're in Inferno difficulty. How does it work against elite mobs? That's one of the most important things you will need to kill in Inferno difficulty in order to get that sick loot. Well, the answer is it works almost exactly the same as it works against white mobs. So I'm going to show you now a video of me taking on an elite mob. Alright, so here I am, and you can see I'm just kind of chugging along, and I run into this elite mob. And so, I mean, as a wizard in Infernal difficulty, you should be extremely used to kiting. You can see kind of the nice thing with having a Seeker on your magic missile there is you don't need to be perfect in your aim, and you can just fire it off really quickly with the stutter step. But you can see you cast. You should be watching your arcane power very closely, and when you have it, you should cast your Hydra at a position where you think it's going to do a lot of damage, hopefully near the enemy's feet, as that's kind of where the venom is most effective. And then you try to tactically cast your blizzard at an area where your opponent or your enemy is going to be walking through. Since it is an Inferno high level build, it has to kind of work in a kiting scenario, since the wizard of course cannot take too many hits at all. And so kind of in these scenarios, what you're going to end up doing is just kind of gaining arcane power. And kind of when you're at your max, you're running, you cast your Hydra, and then you cast a blizzard and then a second blizzard to kind of maximize the amount of damage that your Venom Hydra is going to do. And so it's extremely important for you to clear out as much area as you can to kind of have space to move and navigate your character safely. Alright, so in this video I'm just kind of doing a kind of the initial part of a Skeleton King run in Inferno difficulty. It is not especially difficult at this stage, but you can kind of see a lot of these really core concepts with the Blizzard and Hydra. Watch how I move and draw enemies kind of into the Blizzard area. Of course, you do not want to back yourself into a corner, but things like Diamond Skin and Force Armor allow you kind of to take a couple hits and recover. So you can see that the blizzards, and you can just see that venom kind of collecting on the ground. And so you just kind of want to cast those blizzards really well. You want to move in such a way that you're going to catch the maximum amount of enemies in the blizzard. One other nifty tactic that you can do is kind of lead with your magic missile and Hydra. Because you're a wizard in Inferno difficulty, you are probably not working with a ton of leisure room for you to take extra damage. So you can see here in this video that you kind of slowly spam these kind of low arcane power cost skills forward, so you're able to kind of predict enemy movements. Nothing is worse as a wizard than kind of running headfirst into a huge mob. And this tactic really helps to avoid that. Just kind of a small tip and trick that you can use with this build. Alright, so I'm just going to go over a few more points while we watch me kill the Skeleton King here. It's a fairly straightforward fight, and you can just kind of watch it. There's not too many additional points to point out specifically about the Skeleton King, but I'm just going to kind of talk over this. So you're probably wondering, hey, what are some substitutions that I could make in this build? Well, one of them, it would be to put in Teleport, either with Fracture, and you would probably want to sub in Illusionist as well as a passive skill, or Wormhole instead of Magic Missile. Magic Missile is kind of the miscellaneous slot that isn't necessarily, doesn't necessarily need to be Magic Missile, but it's kind of what I prefer. And so Teleport is just, of course, a great defensive skill to kind of get you out of tough situations, and it has just a ton of utility, skipping through levels, good to resurrect people against kind of bigger boss fights, and it just kind of in general prevents a lot of deaths. It gives you more room, gives you a lot of mobility, can put you in very, very nice situations. Another one, and this would be a more offensive-oriented build, would be to put Arcane Orb with Tap the Source. I don't personally like this, but if you happen to have a lot of items that give you arcane power, just kind of maximum arcane power regeneration, it could be an effective tactic. And it, of course, Arcane Orb offers considerably more DPS than Magic Missile with Seeker on. Tap the Source, of course, I would recommend, because Arcane Orb on its own is 35 arcane power and Blizzard is 45, and you simply cannot afford to use both of those spells very efficiently with that kind of rebuild. And so there the Skeleton King goes down. A couple of strengths of the build are really that it's great in kind of these dungeonous areas with lots of choke points and clumped up slower enemies like skeletons. Of course, Blizzard can work very effectively against quicker enemies too. Generally, when you face off against quicker enemies, what you're going to want to do is stay more within the Blizzard. Because these quicker enemies will be running towards you, and it will be harder for you to navigate kind of through the Blizzard if you're not already just sitting right in that. So generally what I like to do is just kind of sit in the middle of the Blizzard, of course within reason. So you're in those situations you'll usually have to activate Diamond Skinned and just kind of tank some of the damage, and hopefully you have enough vitality to do it. This is also an extremely powerful solo build and can be used both in parties or in solo play. Blizzard in particular scales particularly well when you increase in party members. The Hydra doesn't quite scale as well because it does a raw amount of damage, and as party members join your game, monsters will increase in hit points. But Blizzard, of course, being a very powerful area of effect spell, and Blizzard is really not a spell that you're relying on to do a ton of damage, so in that case it is pretty much just as effective working in groups as it is without. This is Fate from Diablo 3 StrategyGuide.com, bringing you this level 60 Inferno style Blizzard Hydra build rather. I hope you will come to our website, www.diablo3strategyguide.com. We have a lot of other great resources, good videos, both for lower level players as well as higher level players, including individual class guides on the auction house and how to get gold. So I hope you check those things out. Thank you.